some of the guys that live in Ohio. So definitely would be a nice location if you're racing dirt late models, but it's not that bad for sprint cars either.
Okay, and then you touched a little bit on some of your racing careers. So can you talk us through your racing career a little bit?
Yeah, as a kid, I guess I got bit by the bug early. My dad, he did some racing himself in the ASA series, which was like, a different version of ARCA, really a powerful series back in the late 80s and 90s, and it's a shame that it's still not around. But it was super cool looking back and reading the results and seeing all the guys that were there. It kind of, I don't remember a lot from when my dad raced, but it reminds me of the crowds and the fans, and it reminds me of the energy that dirt racing has now. I feel like we're in a good place with the dirt world. So I think that's where the interest started. And then I was lucky enough to be able to start racing about 6 years old in go-karts. And we were just having fun. Dad was taking the car, and we were just kind of learning together and having fun, and we didn't really know a lot. And definitely I don't even think we were in contention to win races. We were just having fun. I thought it was awesome. Just a little kid getting to drive. And then we moved into quarter midgets and, got to taste a little success and, kind of liked how that felt. And then moved, as I got to 15, 16, moved into the full-size cars and ran some midget stuff, and then sprint cars, and did that for a couple of years until at the end of 2010, I moved to North Carolina and was fully invested in trying to make it into the NASCAR world. So I lived in North Carolina for several years, and until, it would have been probably 2017, I moved back home, and I called John Shoebrooks, who owns a sprint car that Brandon Wimmer drives, and he allowed me to drive for him for, I think it was maybe 5, 6, 7 races. And that was my first time back in a sprint car in 7 years. After running some stock car stuff in North Carolina, and it was so hard to keep sponsorship and find sponsorship. It's so hard, so expensive to race down there that as soon as you could work your tail off to get a certain amount of money, and it felt like somebody with just a little bit more money could bump you right out of the seat you were working hard to get. So it was just a really frustrating world, and I think the world of NASCAR that I dreamed of racing in didn't really exist, or it turned non-existent just because of how expensive it got. It was pay to play, and I never really dreamed that it would be that way. So when I moved home, I still wanted to race and look into trying to make a career out of this. Luckily, John Shoebrooks and I raced together for a while, had a blast racing with him, super great guy. And he went with Brandon Wimmer the next year full time, and that's how I got hooked up with Dave Jessup. So we raced together for 2 seasons, and then early this year he decided it was time to enjoy retirement, and now I'm in my family-owned car again and having fun, having as much fun now as I've ever had. So just glad to be a part of this whole racing world, and that's kind of like the long but short version of where I came from in racing. But it's kind of crazy to think how lucky I've been, and I'm just trying to make the best of everything I've been given.
It's kind of come back full circle almost then for you.
Right, exactly. And, it's just, I think sprint car racing compared to where it was in 2009 and 10, I think it's hard now as it's ever been. It's, the talent is amazing. My mind is blown at just the young guys and that are competing right now and how fast and how good they are. And then the guys that are still whooping butt, that were whooping butt back in 2009 and 10, like Dale Blaney, Tim Schaefer. It's kind of crazy that you got to go compete against all those guys, plus the new young guys that are super fast. So I was telling somebody the other day, David Gravel and Sheldon, we all kind of started racing around the same time in 2009, 2008, sprint cars. And, now look at those guys. They are top of the top, the best of the best. And it's kind of cool to see what years and years of this, turns you into an expert. And I'd put those guys up against anybody right now. Now I'm trying to chase them and get to where they're at.
I was going to ask this a little bit later, but you touched on it a little bit. So looking at like the Outlaws and then the All-Stars and then some of the local guys, who would be some of the toughest competitors that you've gone up against?
Well, definitely the Outlaw guys. They do it 100 times a year, so they're just on it. They never really have an off season. Half of them go to Australia and race or run the Chili Bowl, and they never really out of the car. So come Florida, when a lot of people are getting back in the race car for the first time after the winter, those guys are like they never got out of the seat. So, their first laps back in the new year, it's no big deal, and they hit the ground running. So that's hard to compete against because they, when you go crack off some good runs right off the start of the season, that sets the tone. And then the All-Stars now, you got outlaw caliber teams with Reitzel and Deerfoss, Eliason. Those guys are capable of winning outlaw races whenever they show up. So it just shows you where the talent's at. And then, even locally, it's no joke traveling through Pennsylvania and Ohio. There's so much talent. Even the non-wing guys that are kind of transitioning over, it's just really amazing. And now's a good time to be a sprint car fan because if you want to watch a good evening of racing, nowadays even the B main is stacked. So now's a great time to be a fan.
I'd definitely say you never quite know who's going to show up, and then wherever you go, you're going to be treated to a show.
Exactly.
So, can you describe to us your first experience in a sprint car?
Yeah, my first time, I probably was 15 years old, and there was a guy named Wayne McPeak out of close by where I live here in West Virginia who raced a sprint car. And he there was a race at a dirt track called Ohio Valley, and it's 20 minutes from my house. And after the races were over, I got to get in his car and run some laps. And I think I ended up spinning out and kind of going in the infield, and I couldn't quite get it out of gear. And I think I stalled it out just by jamming on the brakes. Wasn't sure how to get it stopped, but that was my first time in a sprint car ever. And I remember the power was crazy to me. I was like, holy cow, how is this even possible to drive this thing by myself around this track, let alone with 23 other cars? It just doesn't seem like it's right. So that was my first time, and I remember thinking as soon as I got out of the car, this is just insane. But on the ride home, it was like it hit me, and I was like, that was the coolest thing I've ever done. I cannot wait to strap back in. And it was just not long after that, we had our own car, and it was some, used motor, used car, used parts and pieces because we knew we were going to crash being a rookie. And sure enough, we ran some races, wiped that car out, got another used car, an old Dale Blaney car, wiped that one out. And after a couple cars, I think we eventually figured out how to race and had a little bit of success. So I'm just really happy that my dad and my mom and everybody gave me the opportunity to follow my dream. And now that I have a dad of my own, I hope I can give my son the same opportunity to chase his dream, no matter what his dream might be. But geez, if he picks racing, that sure would be a nervous wreck.
So we'll talk about family here in a couple minutes, but then another thing, can you tell us about your first sprint car win?
Yeah, well, my first sprint car win was actually in a 360, either 2009 or 10 at Atomic. But I never won a 410 race when I was racing the first couple years and early. I won when I came back, and it was my first year with Dave Jessup. We won the Freedom 40 at Atomic, or at KC, however you want to name it, and it was that was really cool because it was 40 laps. It was, some good cars there, and we started close to the front. It's not on the front row, I can't remember, and we got the lead and, just set sail. And I remember just wanting that. It was 40 laps, and it felt like it was 400. I just, I was like, throw the white flag already. Let's get this thing over with. So, but that, that's the confidence you need. You got to crack off a win, and then, you can do it after that. So I knew we could. It just needed to just finally break through and do it. And then we picked up another win a couple weeks after that. So it was, just what we needed. So that was fun. I'll always remember that. I saved the right rear tire from that night just because it was, first sprint car 410 win, and I was like, I'm going to keep that tire.
Would you say that's your favorite racing memory, or is there another one that kind of pops to head?
My favorite racing story probably would be winning the NASCAR K&N race at Columbus Motor Speedway. My whole family was in the stands, and cousins, aunts, uncles, everything, mom, dad, grandparents. My wife now, which was my girlfriend at the time, she was there. It was just, super cool to have everybody in the stands during their first NASCAR win and getting to celebrate with all of them. That was by far my first, or my best win and best moment in racing. And then, of course, my first ever Xfinity race was at Bristol, and to be at that level racing with the big guys, that was really cool. I think we finished 10th or maybe 11th. I'm really not sure. It was right there. We were battling, top 10, and that was pretty awesome too. Had a lot of family there for that. It was Bristol, somewhere my dad had taken me as, 4, 5, 6-year-old kid. So to be on the other side of the fence, actually on the racetrack there was another cool moment. So, been very fortunate and, got to live my childhood dream. Not many kids, get to actually live the dream that they dreamed when they were a young kid, but I was one of the lucky ones. So I just want to try to make the best of it from here on out and make sure I can, give back to everybody that's given to me and even more, just be a good helping hand into this world because I've sure been very lucky in my short life up to this point.
That's definitely pretty cool. So is there a favorite track that you have, either dirt or asphalt?
It's funny because you like the places you run good at, and then the moment you stop running good at them, you're like, you know what, I don't think I like this place anymore. So, I used to really struggle at Attica and was not a big fan of the place because it kicked my butt. I knew I liked the racing there. I just could never find success. But this year we've ran really well there, and I'd say it's probably one of my favorite tracks right now. But I'm finding myself enjoying the short tracks and sprint car racing. I think they put on really good races. But on the asphalt world, I'd say Bristol and Darlington the places that they were kind of, the grip wasn't